Welcome to another episode of the Urban Wall Street Project. I'm your host, Mr. Earl Christian III, and I hope you got your pen and pad ready because today's segment is a serious one. And we're going to touch on one of the greatest American dreams for many people, and that is buying a home, real estate. Do you know what you need to know? Are you ready to buy a home? Do you have advisors when it comes to buying a home? Because understand something, home ownership is a serious situation, and it can be beautiful or it can be unbeautiful. If you do not know the appropriate terminology, if you do not know the language, and you do not know what's important and what's necessary and what you need to know before you go. And that's the topic, know before you go. I have in my audience with me today or in my studio a gentleman who has done some amazing things. And I will tell you that he is definitely a real estate guru. But what I like mostly about him is that he converted his linear income. And, we talk about that linear income. He's converted his linear income into residual and passive income for his family. He's a 19-year veteran in the New York City Department of Corrections, and he is currently in possession and holdings and cash and equity in excess of $4 million in real estate properties. So suffice it to say, he has definitely done his homework and he has done his thing, and he is surely somebody you can learn from. So once again, get your pen and your pad because you're going to hear some words, you're going to hear some terminology that's going to be important to you when you walk up into that realtor's office. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to my guest and esteemed colleague, Mr. SamoriA.Samad. Mr. Samad, welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks for having me, Earl.
And I have to say I have you at the show because you need to know that this is family for me right now. I've known this gentleman for a long time, and I'm watching him do some phenomenal things in his life, and I just want to get into it. So, Brother Samad, you've seen my show, and you know we talk about financial literacy, economic empowerment. You and I have had conversations with regard to financial literacy. And I get a lot of my audience and people, viewers, have been calling in and watching the shows, and they're doing really well because a lot of people in urban America are not aware, are just not literate in the area of finances. Right. And when it comes to buying a home, that's a major financial purchase. So if you're going to make a major, maybe some of your biggest possibly in your life financial purchase, you really want to be literate in that area. So, today's topic is Real Estate 101 because I want to talk to my people who may not have anybody to talk to, may not know the questions they should ask. So we're going to give them the fundamentals. And those of you watch at home that's watching, stay tuning in because it's going to be a series. You're going to see Mr. Samad again, and we're going to keep teaching you. We're going to get you to that next level so that when you buy a home, you're ready. So, Mr. Samad, introduce yourself. Tell me a little bit about Real Estate 101. What made you get into real estate? You're up.
Well, the reason why I bought a home was because I had a family. He was up and coming. We was living in an apartment, and the rent that we was paying kept constantly going up. And it got to a point where we weren't seeing anything for our money. So when we went to file our taxes, I always found myself paying and never receiving. Right. So that was the main reason that got me involved in real estate, was because I wanted my own home, and I wanted a place for my family to have.
No doubt, no doubt. Now, when you, of course, you grew up in a house because your grandmother had a home, so you did kind of experience, not home ownership, but living in a home, even if you were in an apartment, and you realized the importance. You said something was very important. You said you kept paying out, but not receiving anything back. Right. So now you bought your first home for your family. But when you get into that real estate game, you can't just go out. Well, that house looks nice. I want to buy that house. Plop your money down. Right. There's certain basics. There's some fundamental steps a person should know. There's some language that people should know just on the interim level because it's very important because you don't want to be taken. You don't want to appear too green. Right? So for you, when you decided, I'm going to give me real estate. Now, you were a correctional officer and that was fine. Did you always know that you wanted to do real estate?
I always knew I wanted to do real estate. I have a passion for real estate. I can look at houses all day, every day, which I was doing, making no money at it at all.
Now, that's interesting that you said that, Samoria, that you could look at houses all day and you do that. And initially, you were doing it for no money at all. And that's important that people need to understand. Sometimes when you have a passion for something, you can do it when you're not making any money at all. And that happens when if you're an entertainer. And you know this, if you're entertaining, you're an artist, you're a rapper, you're a teacher. Some people do things because they love to do it. In your situation, you loved looking at homes. Right. Now, when you used to look at homes and not making any money at it because you like to do it. When did you decide, you know what, I'm a homeowner and I've always liked real estate. Real estate's my passion. But now I think I'm ready to step into the arena and start my initial stages of investing in real estate. When did you know?
Well, I believe I first knew, I was watching an infomercial at night. I believe it was Carlton Sheets. And just some of the things that he was saying, the lifestyle that it offers, not even so much the lifestyle, but the paychecks that went along with it. And I got to be honest, I got involved with it because of the money. There was no way that I could see making this kind of money in no other arena. When you look at my situation, you have to understand that I have no college background. I have no previous experience. So entrepreneurship was the way for me to go. Right. Real estate just became that passion because I like what I heard on the infomercial. I want to see if it was real.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now you heard information on the infomercial, and you said, you know what, this is my passion. Sounds good. And it looked like something I could do, to situate me and my family in a better situation for our financial future and our residential future.
Right.
But before you just ran up into some realtors office, before you went to go make your second purchase, because your home you lived in is your home, but I'm talking about your first one that you're going to be buying it and maybe fixing it up, selling it, or whatever the case may be. You had there's some terminology, some language. And when I ask you that, because we have viewers, and there are many people that are interested in buying a home, right. And home ownership is the key. That's what everybody wants. As I said at the top of the show, American dream is to buy a home. But there is language, there are terminology, there's certain things you need to know. There's some basic fundamental vocabulary that a person needs to know or be familiar with before they go in it. Right. If you will, give me just 4 or 5 key words that, as a basic, you should understand.
Well, when you're going to buy a house, one of the key words that you need to know is contract. Going to contract is almost like when you're going to put money down. The lawyers get together, you get together, and that's the signing of the papers. Right. Another key word that you need to know is closing. Okay. Closing takes place at the end after the transaction is done. That's where keys, deed, titles, everything is exchanged at that point at the closing. And another key word is appraisal. Appraisal. Cannot get a loan without an appraisal. Right. Appraisal is simply when someone goes out to the house and the bank sends someone out to the house to deem if it justifies sending the money to this particular person. Right, right. You know what I mean? So the bank is not going to give a person money if they don't think the house is worth it. Right. Now I know a few. I know a few SamoriA, a few words, and I'm gonna share these, and you educate me and my audience. Here's another word that I've heard, and you see it sometimes. Escrow. Escrow. What does escrow mean? Escrow, Earl, is basically when you get a mortgage. When a bank gives you a mortgage, they ask you how do you want to pay your taxes. Okay. You can either pay your taxes with the monthly payment, or you can escrow them to the side. Okay. So escrow is sort of like a bank account on the side where you put your money is placed into, and your monthly payment is one, and then your taxes and insurance are separated. Okay. But you can't have it together. Okay. Okay. Another word that we see in the newspapers and we hear it. Of course, the homeowner doesn't like it too much, but for an individual who's an investor, it might be it's a golden word, like foreclosure. Foreclosure. Never something you want to have if you're going to buy your home. That's why we have Real Estate 101. Definitely. I'm giving you this word so you don't get caught up in foreclosure. But Mr. Samad is going to tell us exactly what foreclosure is and why you don't want to find yourself there. Foreclosure, Mr. Samad. A foreclosure, Earl, is basically when the bank, for whatever reason, you can't pay the bank. And the bank, you get behind 3 payments. I believe it's 90 days. 90 days. When you get 90 days behind, you go into pre-foreclosure, at which time the bank is actually is in the process of taking back the house from you. Right. And that's what a foreclosure is. A foreclosure you don't want to have on your record. It destroys your credit. It makes it harder for you to get your next house or the next purchase that you may want to make, or anything in particular. So your foreclosure is what you don't want. Okay. I know there's a couple more words we were talking before the show. Appreciation. We all know what appreciation generally means, but in real estate it may have a different terminology or a different meaning. What does appreciation mean in the real estate world? Appreciation is a wonderful thing. When you buy a house, let's use an example. You buy a house for $100,000, and within a month, within 3, 4, 5 months down the road, the value of the house actually goes up. Okay. It increases. So, the money, like if we use the example of $100,000, figure in 6 months it may go up to $110,000, $120,000, which is appreciation. Okay, excellent, appreciation. But appreciation is not a guaranteed thing. That's just a thing that happens depending on the economy at that time. Right. Okay, appreciation. Now I know, when we talk about real estate, and I know I'm definitely going to be entrenched in the real estate arena shortly within the next 2 to 3 years. But I used to come across terminology that said owner financing, and I know sometimes owner financing could be a good thing depending on
on your credit situation or your monetary situation, but primarily credit. Because if I'm correct, if I'm accurate, you correct me if I am or if I'm not. But to me, owner financing sounds like just what it is. The owner is going to finance it, meaning maybe I'm not going through the bank, or I don't feel my credit is good enough to go through the bank, and the owner of the property sees that I have money or I have a job and just is willing to take the loan on themselves, correct? And they're basically financing it. So I pay directly to the owner. The bank is not even existing.
Right. The owner is actually the bank.
Okay. Is that a beneficial situation for individuals to be in?
Absolutely, because people with credit scores less than 620 now, it used to be 580 to get a 100% finance loan. It is now 620. So if you don't have a 620 score and you can't go to the bank or the mortgage company to qualify for a loan, then owner financing would be the best option, where the owner actually becomes the bank and finances their property to you.
Okay. So owner financing, and that's very important. And I know there might be a lot of people, unfortunately, whose credit scores may not be a 620, and they have to go that option. But it is a good option that you can look into, and sometimes it may even be a better option than having to deal with the bank.
Absolutely.
Right.
Anytime you don't have to deal with a bank, it's always better. Always. You got more flexibility. The terms are usually a lot better. So if you have bad credit, don't worry, don't sweat it. Look for things that you can afford to do. Look in the paper where you see owners will assist in financing or owner will finance. Those are the key terms that you're looking for if you want a house with bad credit. Right.
Now, and so there we go. We talked a little bit about, buying a home, but, like we said, this is real estate 101. Maybe there's some people that I don't necessarily want to buy a home. I just want to buy a property, flip them up, and sell them. And I remember being at a seminar where, people were making $1,000 deals, never really owning the homes, because there's so many different facets and nuances in this thing called real estate. So now we talked about buying a home. We talked a little bit about what you need to buy a home. So let me ask you, Mr. Samad, say, and this is for my completely green watcher at home. Because urban America, we're green in a lot of areas. We're an intelligent people, but in a lot of areas we have not been educated, so we're green, but we're always willing to learn, so we don't make the mistakes. So here I am, first-time home buyer.
Right.
I walk into Platinum Real Estate.
Okay.
And I'm coming to speak to Mr. Samad. What's some things I should know? What's something you would be looking for me to ask? What's something that I would want to be able to say so Mr. Samad really, okay, this person has an idea of what they need and what they're getting into, because you're getting into a serious situation.
So, Earl, basically what you're saying is you're looking to invest in another property or you're buying your first home?
Say, let's do twofold.
Okay.
But actually, we kind of talked about, if I'm buying my home. We talked about escrow and owner finance, and we talked a little bit about it. But a lot of people want to invest in real estate because we see real estate as an investment. Okay. You might buy one home, but you might have a few others, or you might live in an apartment and have home that you rent or live in a condo.
Right.
So if you want to get into real estate investment, you know what? I went to a expo. And I heard all these financial gurus and these real estate persons, and I just spent $1,500 on one of those packages. So I got this 3-inch book binder with all these terminology about real estate investing. I'm walking into you for the first time because I've come across a property that I think I like. It looks like it could be a good deal, but hey, I don't know. That's why I'm coming to you. What determines a good deal?
So what makes a deal a good deal? Any deal that you can find 40% below market value is a great deal.
40% below market value.
40%.
Okay. Now, market value. That's another word I didn't get. Now, market value. Real quickly, to let people know, because they say 40% below market value. That sounds good, but what is market value?
Market value, Earl, is basically whatever the houses in that area are going for.
Okay.
If all the houses are comping or all are sort of more or less the same price. Right. 40% below that is a great deal.
Oh, okay, excellent. 40% below that.
And usually a great deal with the 40% below is usually rundown houses, houses that need work.
Rundown houses. So would you say for somebody who wants to invest, like what type of properties, if you're brand new, you never really invested before, but I mean, you have a little bit of change to throw around because you've been planning and you know there's something you wanted to get into because you know you had a passion for it, but now you feel you're ready. You've learned some things, you've read, you've done your diligence, and you think you're ready.
Right.
So now, you find a property that's 40% below market, or that's what your goal. That's your goal. What you want to find.
Right.
I'm quite sure it's not always easy to find that.
Very difficult to find.
To find that, but you find that. So if you're not able to find that, say you're not able to find that deal, what else makes a good deal? So that's one thing that makes a good deal, right?
Well, that's a good rule of thumb to find if you can find a property 40% below market value. But obviously, those are difficult to find. But any deal where 30%, 20% is more common to find. You know, those are the deals.
All right. I like that. And it's important, you know, it's important that as you're watching this at home, you're listening to some of the language that we're talking about, and you're listening to the terminology, because these are the key things. Remember, language. We did a show on language. Language, the language that you utilize will determine how you're received, how you're interpreted, and thus how you're served. So it's very important that your language is indicative of someone that has an idea, at least, about where they're trying to go or what it is they're looking for. So, you know, if you want a good deal, you want something that's 40% below market value. You might always find that, but that's a good rule of thumb. That's something that you want to aim for. And if you find 35, 20, 25, then you know what you're working with, but you know what your goal is, and you try to work with that. Now, here's another good question. I know there's a lot of myths.
Right.
There's a lot of myths, and I'm sure you know, there's a lot of myths that urban Americans have when it comes to buying a home, what they need, what they don't need. Right. Let's first talk about, can you think of 3 myths that we can talk about, that we can completely dispel? Like, okay, you probably thought this was how it is, but that's not accurate. It actually is like X, Y, Z. Are there a couple of myths, maybe 1 or 2 you can share with me that you think, and when I say myths, Mr. Samad, I say that to say this. Urban Americans might not buy homes as much as they would like to or they need to because they have misinformation.
Right.
So give me maybe some misinformation that people need, like, i.e., I don't have $20,000 to put down on a house.
Right.
Is that a myth? Do you need $20,000 to put down on a house?
Absolutely not.
Right. So So there's a myth. Once we're going to dispel that one, you don't necessarily need $20,000 to put down on a home. What might you need? What could you buy a home with?
Well, if it's the first time you're buying a home, Earl, they have all kinds of programs by Sony Mae, Fannie Mae, and they have where you can put 3% down. Okay. All depends on how much you make, what you bring in home. Right. And they have a formula which determines how much you make as opposed to what kind of house you can afford. Right. So going into this, you know, if you make $30,000, you can afford a house that's X amount of dollars. Right. And that's the myth. You don't need $20,000. You don't need $30,000 to buy a home. Now, I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that, because I was just recently looking in a paper, and in America, middle class is considered household earnings of $75,000 to $135,000. Right. That's middle class. Right. So clearly, middle class is not much of urban America. Though we're doing the thing, average person in urban America is not making $75,000, or that's the household income, or even the median income, if you will. So somebody that's making $30,000, I'm glad you said that, because you got a lot of people making between $30,000 and $40,000, $30,000 and $50,000, but they want to buy a home. So if you're someone who's making, say, $35,000, okay, what price range home should you be realistically looking at? That depends on your debt to ratio, how many outstanding bills you have. But generally, if you don't have any bills, I would say if you're making between $30,000 and $35,000, I would say a house realistically about $200,000 to $225,000. About $225,000. Wow. So that means if you live in New York and you make $35,000 a year, you might not really want to buy a house just yet, because it's so hard to find a home for $200,000 in the city of New York. Other places, Atlanta, $200,000 could probably get you a nice little estate. Right. Maryland and in other parts of the country, but in New York. But that's something to talk about. Earl, let me just say this. And again, it depends on your debt to ratio. If you make $35,000, you probably could afford a house a little bit more than $225,000. I think the median or the average house in New York right now is going about $300,000. Okay. That's why we have so many foreclosures on the rise, because banks are now giving out these loans, which are self-interest loans, where it's almost like people can get into the house. You know, we'll give you the house, right, but you maintain the house. Right, right. So once you get the house, you're all caught up in the excitement of getting the house, right, but maintaining the house is something totally different. Right. So you got to be careful. And that's very important. We talk about that with a lot of things. Getting into college is easy. It's graduating that's tough. Right. Getting a Mercedes or a BMW, it might not be hard. It's maintaining that car. So once again, getting a home is not the problem. You can get the home, but can you maintain it? And that's what you need to be confident and conscious of. Can you maintain it? Because if you're not
able to maintain that home, then you will find yourself in foreclosure. And then you may find yourself with your credit completely twisted. And you know, at the Urban Wall Street Project, we're about financial empowerment, economic empowerment. We don't want our finances twisted. Unfortunately, our communities, you know, seemingly, sad to say, are twisted. So we're about changing and eradicating these poor spending habits and these poor practices with regard to our economics. So it's very, very mindful that you write some things down. So I want you to understand that. He says something very important. Debt to
ratio.
Debt to ratio. Now here, debt to ratio. Do you know what that means? If you don't, we're going to find out right now. Debt to ratio. Mr. Samad, what is debt to ratio?
Debt to ratio, Earl, is your expenses versus your income.
Okay.
What goes out as opposed to what comes in.
Right, right.
So if you have a lot of outstanding debt, car payments, credit cards, monthly bills, that would set your debt to what you make from your job or whatever income that you have. That would sort of set the criteria for the debt to ratio. And that's what banks use.
All right.
Also
so that's definitely one myth we dispelled. You know, you don't need $20,000 to move, you know. So sometimes you see something, no money down, or $5,000 down, or 10% down. And like you said, 10% is based on, if it's a house is $100,000 and you need 10%, you only need $10,000. If the house is amazing deal and it's $60,000 for whatever, you know, incredible reason, then you need $6,000. So it's all about the property of the home. So it's very important to understand that. Right. So that's one particular myth that we dispel. Is there another myth? Because I'm sure you've talked to people who want to buy homes and they think they know what's another myth? Or what's another, how should I say? I won't say a myth. Some other language you heard a person that come in and buy a home. You're like, wow, I understand your position, but that's just not accurate. Which, you know what I'm saying? Have you had to do that before?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Another key thing, Earl, is that when I got into the real estate arena, I found out very quickly that you don't need money and you don't need credit.
You don't need money and you don't need credit, but you need knowledge.
You need knowledge.
Okay.
And once you know, people who have bad credit, knowledge is king. Once you know, like what I just gave you earlier about owner financing and owner will assistant finance, you already know that you can get into a house with bad credit. Right. And very, very, very little money. Wow. So that's a huge myth that you need money and credit. You don't. Right. You need knowledge. You need knowledge.
And you're mad because understand something. Somebody has $1 million, but their credit score is a 10. You think they'll get financed by an owner? Sure they will. If they can show that owner, you know, my credit's bad, I made bad mistakes, I didn't know it, but I made smart other investments, and now I have a monthly income of $20,000, $30,000 a month. But don't look at my FICO score because it looks crazy. Right. But my money is right. And if it's an owner, and they can verify that this person's money is coming in, I can see that this person has his money, his bank account shows it, his banker says it looks good, there's a good opportunity. And that's one myth I think a lot of urban Americans, we get caught up in. Unfortunately, we get lambasted with, you know, credit cards and all that at an early age, and we're not taught that. We're not taught how to be responsible when it comes to credit. Because credit is not your money. And when you get in a situation where you're spending money that you don't have yet, you're chasing your money. That's never a situation you want to be in. Never. You don't want to ever chase your money. Chasing money is like, once again, linear income. You want your money chasing you. So once again, you don't necessarily need $20,000. You don't have to have a perfect credit score. Yeah, you don't have to have a perfect credit score, and you don't need a whole lot of money, and that's important. Those are just two simple things. No, there's a whole lot of other things out there. But the bottom line is, you have to educate yourself, because the banker is not going to tell you what you need to know. Because by telling you what you need to know, that might be taking money out of his pocket. And every single person. The reality is this: you need to know just as much about your deal as the people who are the deal makers in it. Because if everybody else is knowledgeable about the deal that you're doing, or more knowledgeable, you're going to wind up losing. You're going to wind up holding that bag at the end of the day. Okay, we've talked about a lot of things, and the show is coming to a close, but I want to ask one last thing. I was reading in a book recently where it said, you know, even when you think you own your home, you don't necessarily own it, and that comes with a tax lien. So if you could tell me, like, 20 seconds quickly, why you need to look out for when it comes to that.
Well, with a tax lien, Earl, as you said earlier, you never really own your home. Even after 30, 40, 50 years of paying on it, the reality of it is that you don't own your home. The bank owns your home, because you don't own the ground that your house sits upon in most cases, unless you buy the land. So with a tax lien, what a tax lien does is that even though you pay your mortgage payments on time and you pay them monthly, sometimes if you don't escrow properly, an investor like me can come buy tax liens to your property, and still, even though you've been making the payments, you haven't made your taxes, you haven't made payment on your taxes, an investor can come and actually purchase your property for the taxes that's owed on it.
And that's amazing. You understand that? So if you have a home and it's $250,000 and you fall behind the taxes and the taxes are $8,000-9,000, and the investor comes and pays that $9,000, they may come in possession of your $250,000 home. So that's very key. Before we got out of here, I think I may have misrepresented Mr. Samad. I'm not misrepresenting him completely, but he does more than just real estate. I'm going to give him a chance to let you know exactly. So if you need his assistance, definitely reach out to the contacts at the end of the information.
Well, basically, I just want to add on to what you say. Not only do we sell houses, but we buy houses. But more importantly, we help people with poor credit find houses. If you really want a house and you desire a house of your own, I guarantee you, and I'm putting a personal guarantee that my company, we will find you a way to get the house of your dreams.
Beautiful, beautiful. You understand that, Urban America? There's people just like you that can help you, that can make it happen. I hope you've learned something. I hope you had your pen and pad out. I hope you wrote some things down. You can reach out to us by our email or however it may be. You can reach out to Mr. Samad. As always, you've been watching the Urban Wall Street Project. Keep your head up. Stay prosperous. Be literate. Be wise. Be mindful. Stay blessed. Peace.